Oh, hey, welcome to the video. I'm Melissa, I write books. In this vlog, we are brainstorming and actually not brainstorming, we're plotting out and doing some world building for a fantasy project that goes by the alias of Project Never Been. If you're confused, maybe you skipped one video and now you're like, Alyssa, what's going on? I did literally yesterday shelve Project Sunshine at about 40,000 words. I explained it in my last video, so you can go and check that out if you are curious. But I've been having a very reflective day. I filmed that video where I talked about why I'm changing my project that I'm working on. I just went on a long walk where I kind of started thinking about the book. I was listening to Unwritten by Natasha Bedingfield. I was listening to From Now On from The Greatest Showman. I was listening to What Doesn't Kill You Make You Stronger by Kelly Clarkson. Like, I was having my moment, and now I'm excited. So we are going to be doing some world building and some plotting for like big picture for this project. I have a Save the Cat outline that I'm like halfway committed to keeping from the spring. So I think I'm going to start with looking through the 3 chapters I have written. The first thing I'm going to do is flesh out some of the world building elements, flesh out like the major arc of the duology, because I only have book 1 fleshed out, but I know it's going to be a duology. And so I want to kind of get a big picture of like, here's the general arc for the duology. I think with that will come some fleshing out of the magic system. It's not a super intricate magic system. It's pretty low, but I still want to flesh out the origins, how it works, who has what. And I've started a framework of that. I have this Notion page that is like kind of a hub for this series. And I've been kind of just like filling it out here and there for fun. But that's going to be what my writing is for today. And until it's done is to just flesh out that world a little bit, get a big picture of where the duology is going. And then I don't know quite how I'm going to feel after doing that, but I do plan at some point to get note cards. I have written out some literally just with characters' names on one side of it. So I'm going to make a note card for each of my characters and just do a little bit of character work as well. Then I'm also going to do note cards like I just did for Project Sunshine. It's kind of a good practice round where I take the beats of the Save the Cat and I actually put them into scenes. And then I have on the backside, like what happens in the scene, what like the setup of the scene, the conflict of the scene, the resolution, and the cliffhanger sort of for each scene. And so I'm going to do that. I don't know if I'm going to do it for the whole book, but for the next set of chapters. And I might continue to write because I have the first book is pretty well mapped out and I'm happy with it. But I also have been making this list in this Notion of like when I'm reading or when I'm just like, I think of an idea or a trope or an element that I really love, I'll put it into this Notion. And so I'm also going to look at that and see like, do I want to bring any more fun elements into the first book and weave them into the plot a little bit, or do I want to have these happen in the second book? Like, what do I want to happen? Because I want the full duology to be plotted out before I really write it. And I kind of want to write, this is just like what I'm sort of thinking about. I don't know if I'm going to do it for sure, but I kind of want to write both books like as if it's one book. Like I want to write a draft that goes all the way through the second book. I don't know. I'm still like warming up to this idea of that this is what I'm working on. So I'm not going to commit to anything, but it would kind of work out if I start writing this in September. If I have September, October, November, just like maybe I could, I don't know. I mean, nothing I say is a promise, as we all know. I change my mind and shelve things and pick things back up. And I make no promises, but that's kind of what I'm thinking about.
The trees, they are singing to the tune of a song, and the wind is gently ringing the bell that brings the morning, the welcome of the dawn. The voice of the robin, call of the dove, the red leaves are falling, long.
Okay, I've been spending some time with the book, and it's just so odd to be back in brainstorming. I'm having a little bit of whiplash, but I'm already really excited about this book. I have like the barest bones notes for a book 2, like that I had written, like a sentence. But I'm just loving like the freedom of fantasy. You can just do so much more, and like I feel like what I was getting really exhausted with my contemporaries is that you have to justify everything. Like, would this happen in a real world? Would somebody really make this decision? Would a therapist do this? Would a police officer do this? Would a person who's kidnapping someone do this? And like, yes, you still need to make sure that people's motivations are clear in fantasy, but the motivation was never the problem. It was always the like logistical, like in a real world setting, how we operate day to day in a business setting. Like, would this happen? Would this fly? How would people react to this in a contemporary setting? And like, I still think that there's value in that. And I'm not saying I'm gonna go back to writing thrillers, but it's just nice to be able to like have crazy things going on and not have to like be like, and this is why this is happening, and like be so self-aware about it in the prose itself, because this would be more normal for people in this setting. Like, that's what I'm the most excited about, is this being normal for these people, is that there's danger and peril and kidnapping and all this stuff happening regularly, and so I don't have to sit here and like spend paragraphs justifying it. I have 3 chapters written, and they're all from Dahlia's point of view. And it's supposed to go every other, and so I remember that, though I was just writing in sequential order for her POV, and so I'm going to go back and write the first 3 of Cecil's first. Yes, and then they'll kind of interweave, and then I'll go back and forth, likely. Unless I don't know. I'm trying not to have so many rules. I'm trying to just, like, live, you know, and just, and just write a fun book, you know? And they actually meet pretty early on, thank God. And so I'm just excited to write like a pure romance where it's like they're on the page together a lot and they're like actually having a really good romance arc. Like, I'm just excited. It's just more fun. There's so many scenes I'm excited about. Whereas in Sunshine, it was just like, it was just so serious. Like, it was so like theme heavy and like working through our battles, but not in a fun way. You know, it was very like, we're having a mental breakdown the whole book, which is like, there's a time and a place for that kind of book. But it's exhausting to write, frankly, at this point where I'm at. But I do want to prioritize at least getting a big outline for the whole thing. And there's only like one thing that I really need to actually figure out before I start writing, and that is like how the magic intricately works. So how the magic works, but then I also need to figure out, there's two sort of like at odds groups of people, as there usually is in a fantasy book, but what they think about the magic really defines a lot about them. And so I need to define like, how does the magic system actually work? How does group A think it works, and what is the implications for that? And then how does group B think it works, and what are the implications for them? And I have like a rough idea. I just need to flesh that out more before I start like really writing, because that's very important to like everybody's conflict. Like, that's like what propels us into the action of the book, is what these groups think about the magic and what that means they're going to do about it. But I also need to define like, what is the truth first, and then how these 2 groups have interpreted the truth over this period of time. I have the rough sketches of it. I just need to really like, I need to get into the specifics of like, how does it activate? Who has it? Where does it come from? What is the limitations of it? And then I think I can honestly jump into writing it, because that's the core of the world building. And then I probably should actually make some, like, one group of people, like Dahlia's POV, her world is pretty fleshed out. Cecil's is not. So I need to kind of flesh out like, what is his family situation? What is the vibes? Like I know why he's doing what he's doing, and I know his like closest relationships, but like, what is the vibe of that location that he's coming from, and map that out a little bit more. But I'm not gonna like go overkill. Like, the beginning of this book, I've been thinking about it for like months now, and so not actively, but I generally know what happens, honestly, in the whole book. And so some of those scenes are just more this is the thing about this book, is that the scenes inherently have more action in them, so I don't feel the need to like structure them out so much. Whereas in Sunshine, it was like the scene is them sitting and having a coffee. I needed to structure out like what is the conflict in that scene, whereas these, it's a little easier to find what the conflict is. I think I'm gonna do scene work like a little bit ahead of where I'm at instead of trying to do it for the whole book. I want to make sure that my scenes are dynamic and that they have complexity going on too, but sometimes that happens without planning. So anyway, I gotta go. I'll see you.
Silk lining, delicate paper, tangerine lime. Tulip petals on the dresser all come to mind. Soft fawn pink brush and shoulders, page 55. You trace letters over the pictures of the climbing vine. I'm in a field of roller making. I can see a moonflower awaken somewhere way past taken.
Hey. So it's Wednesday night, and I think I talked to you before this actually, but I was just doing some sprints from some people from that retreat I went to, and that was really, really great. And we did 235s. And during that time, I fleshed out the entire magic system, question mark. Seems like it should take longer than that, but I analyzed, I made like a table. I've been using a lot of tables in Notion where I have like on the rows, I have like, here's what the truth is, here's what the castle elite think, here's what the woods people think, and here's what the normal castle people think. And then I have on the is it the rows of the columns? I don't know. On the side, it says, like, first it's like the origin of magic. So then it's like what everybody thinks the origin of the magic is. And then I have the same thing for what happened to the magic, like why is it gone, or why is it like more sparse than it was? What are the limits of the magic? And then in the same vein, like what are the physical capabilities, like what does this magic actually do and look like, and like what can you actually do with it, and how does it manifest? And then also like how do you stop the magic, like how is it contained, how is it stopped? And so I filled that out for each of those categories. And then I also started doing a Save the Cat just in Notion. And I have it also as a table. So the first row is like the beat, the second column, I think it's a column. The first column is the beat, the second column is Dahlia, and the third column is Cecil. And it's like flowing so quick. The pieces of the story are coming together, the pieces of the world building are coming. Even as I was writing down the magic system, it just came alive sort of as I was writing out the origins of like what happened years ago to get us to this point. And it all just like started coming, and then it was like I couldn't type it fast enough. And it's been a long time since I felt this way about writing, where it just feels like everything fits and that each new idea I come up with doesn't contradict what I've already created. It actually enhances it. And that like my brain is like so easily putting together all these pieces of this story. And that might just have something to do with like, I did do a brainstorm and an outline of this months ago, so maybe I've just been stewing on these thoughts, but even the beats of the story are just like really organic and really engaging, and like they feels like, oh, I can slip this element in here and it actually helps me get into Act 2. And like threading in the world building and threading in the backstory isn't like hindering, I haven't written it yet, but it's not hindering the progression of the story. It's actually like leading to the progression of the story, which is exactly what you want. And sometimes I feel like I've been having to like cram the elements of story and the backstory and the motivation all into a scene that like is cohesive, and I'm just cramming it all to fit. And this just feels like these are where the pieces naturally fit for this story. It's still overwhelming. I was feeling this yesterday where when you're in the brainstorming outlining phase of a book, especially a fantasy book, it's like there's so many possibilities for where this book could go. There's so many different themes, there's so many different tropes, like the magic, the characters, like the setting, like I could go a whole different direction. Like there's so many possibilities and it's kind of overwhelming. I feel like now I'm kind of narrowing the scope of like, here's what's involved and here's the themes and here's the tropes and here's how the magic works. Now having this magic really solidified also puts so many of the story pieces into place too, and it's kind of making it this like more brutal, I don't know, because there's a certain way I want the world to feel, because I don't want it to feel super light, but I also don't want it to feel like hopeless. You know, like there's some magic systems you go into and it's like, it's intentionally written this way, but you feel just like, or even fantasy worlds where it just feels like terrible all the time. Like nothing is ever going to be good. And I don't want it to feel like that. I want it to feel like there is hope and there are good people and there's like maybe some good intentions, but that there's just like, I still do want that corruption, as I feel like most fantasy worlds have that layer of corruption. But I want it to feel like my characters have a fighting chance. You know, like I don't want it to feel like they're climbing up this hill that they have no possibility of reaching. You know, I'm feeling really excited to start writing it. It is a little daunting because I just want to make sure everything is right, of course. I feel like I have a really good base now. I do still need to like flesh out some more side characters. I think I just don't have a lot of side characters right now. And so what I might do is I'll continue to work on the Save the Cat, but I'll also, in the same way that I have like how do these groups of people feel about the magic and like what do they know about it, I'm gonna make another chart, I think, that's like the main characters, the protagonist and the antagonist, and what their main like motivation in every point of the story is. But I very much see this as like the duology is pretty scoped in on these two. They're like immediate, like there's two other side characters who are pretty integral to what's going on, but it's not until book 2, and honestly even like a later, like this is kind of expanding before me, as it often does. Like this is more of like an origin. It's not an origin story because there's an origin of the magic and everything, but like this is really a story about these two, and it kind of, I want it to feel like it's like sort of the beginning of a bigger story. It really does feel like it's them two against the world, and I like that feeling. But I want to, especially in the second book, like branch out and expand because they need to have allies. Like they need to have people they're working with, and more enemies too. So I think that is maybe a piece I'm still working with, trying to pull together. But especially at the beginning of the story, it really is just the two of them. But then once we get into the second half, there will be a lot more characters. So I need to figure out how I want that to feel. Oh, hello. Welcome. It's 9:13 p.m. Burning the midnight oil here at Alyssa and the Books household. But I've just been fueled by some Nerds Gummy clusters and like 45 minutes of really emotional fandom TikTok edits. And I'm ready. I'm ready to write. TikTok is such a mixed bag because sometimes I'm on there and I'm just depressed. And other times I'm on there, and right now my feed is like 85% like really beautiful Doctor Who edits and 15% of all the other fandoms, and then sometimes I'll get like a breaking news, crazy news story in there. And then I'm also on the side of TikTok with like HR representatives. I don't know what's going on, but I am having a good time. So every time I go on TikTok, I feel like I'm being creatively inspired, which is not the usual TikTok experience. I just really curated. I think I see every single Doctor Who edit. Anyway, you don't care, but I think I'm gonna write. I got through the Save the Cat of the first book, and I started doing some preliminary, like overarching work for the second book, but I think I'm gonna work on that during the day, and then, or I'm still gonna work on that and finish that up, but I am going to tonight, I think, do a little sneaky sprint of actual writing in this book, which is exciting. I'm gonna go back to, I have 3 chapters written. All 3 of them are in Dahlia's point of view. This book will alternate Dahlia, Cecil, because it's a romantasy, it's dual POV romantasy. Why am I speaking like that? I don't know. I'm gonna read through the chapter and then write Cecil's course, like the missing Cecil chapters, essentially. But the first chapter, I think I need to either add, there's a certain character who I need to introduce that is currently in this version not introduced. So I'm gonna either add in a chapter or a scene that might be in chapter 1 or chapter 2. I'm gonna read it and see. But then I'm gonna get, like, maybe write that little scene or jump into Cecil's first chapter. I now have a better idea of where we're going with that. Right.
Sadness wrapped around the frame, would you see yourself? Someone that you used to be before you was buried in responsibility. I know it's hard to see all the things that you could never be. Written in the stars and embroidered in your name, but never was. How it hurts to know.
Oh, hey, welcome to the end of this video. I like writing again, everyone. And you might be thinking to yourself, haven't you liked it this whole time? And yes, but there's such a difference between like liking writing as a whole and liking specifically writing a certain book. There's sometimes when you write and it's like, I like the process of doing this, like I know I'm enjoying this overall, but then there's another like level to that of like enjoying the actual sentences and enjoying the actual story. I have been missing that. Anyway, so I was just at a coffee shop this morning. I've just been working on world building in chapter 1 this week. It was good, like the bones of it were fine. I can't decide if it's cliche or not. You know, there's some tropes where it's just like a little cliche, but it's cliche for a reason because it makes sense. I don't know. I will still probably come back to that book and tinker around, or that chapter and tinker around with it a little bit, but I needed to add in a scene with another character. Like there's this character who comes up later in the book that we wouldn't meet until later in the book because this is like her only chapter, or there's like 2 chapters where she's in this location before she leaves the location for the rest of the book, but we need to meet this person that she knows. And I also was realizing, like, I kind of think I started just a tish too late in her, like, I just needed to, like, spend more time in her normal for the first and second chapter so that there was, like, you had a little bit more of, like, what is her life? What is her world, you know? There was a lot of telling that was in there, and I feel like it's just hard. It's just hard with the fantasy because it's not even really that hard. It's just, it's different because there's so much more information to convey. Like in a thriller, you don't have to convey like the police solve crimes and kidnapping is a crime. And like, like you don't have to explain like kidnapping for ransom is a thing that happens because it's just like set in our world. So we already know the rules, me just explaining what basic world building is anyway. But in a fantasy book, like you have to lay that in. And I don't think I'm putting too much on the page, but you really do need to understand like her specific circumstance right away. And so I was just kind of playing around with how to convey that information. Tell me if you think this is really basic because similar to how I was with Sunshine, I'll probably share more early on about the book than I will later on in the book. So we're back to me sharing more. But essentially this starts with her like getting ready. And I know that that's a really cliche way to start a book, which is But it's specifically her, like she's sort of a princess figure in like a castle situation. This is such a shift from what I was writing before. But she's like getting ready for this ball. But she's also getting ready, like she's like, there's this story, there's this sort of prophecy. I don't use the word prophecy at this point, but it's sort of like that where she'll get like stolen away on that day. So she knows like, okay, people are coming to kidnap me, essentially, vibes. So I have it where she's like getting ready for this ball, but she knows that like she's probably not gonna make it to the ball. And the way I explain this is like, there's like a maid and there's like a little girl maid who's there who comes in and is like freaking out and is like, why does everybody keep saying that you're gonna die? And so then she like sort of explains to this child, like, you know how there's all these stories that you learn in class, like, you know about that? And then the girl's like, I'm not very good at listening in class. And the main character is like, girl, me neither. Anyway, but she sort of like reassures the girl of like, there's this story about me. That's why people think that's gonna happen. But it's not, it's gonna be fine. Like that's what she tells the girl. So this is the audience's introduction to it as well. And then the girl like, is like, takes that for what it is. And then the other maid who's in the room is like, do you really believe that? Like, you think it's not gonna happen? And she's like, yep, I think I'm gonna be fine, right? But that's sort of like the introduction into what this day is. And I can't decide if it's super basic or not. Like, I know it's not the most original opening. And that's not the whole first chapter. She then goes and like, but essentially I need to set up in the first chapter, like, this is a night that she's likely going to be kidnapped because of this reason, and she knows it. Like, that's where we have to start. And so that's just how I'm gonna go about it for this draft. I don't think it's like the most basic thing in the world, but it's sort of a lot of cliches of like telling a story to a child to do world building, getting ready for a ball. Like, I feel like I've read that before, but I don't think it's bad. That to be determined on that. This is baby's first world building dump, right? You know, like we have to go through those things, but I'm really liking how the prose is coming along, and I want to sort of build out like how she's feeling about how she was raised and like what her attitude is towards what's coming. Because the big twist and hook and all this stuff of the book isn't like, oh, she's gonna get kidnapped. Like, that's the setup, is that she's gonna be taken on this night, and she knows it, and she's known it her whole life. And so I need the audience to just like get on that page right away. Then the story begins, right? Because otherwise I was trying to figure out like, how else can we get this across? Because it's not like she would just be thinking that, because she already knows her life situation. So she wouldn't be like going up to a random maid and being like, tonight I'm gonna be kidnapped. Like, that just, it makes sense for a child not to know that, right? And to be worried about her friend, right? The princess, she's, I don't know. And then we get a little hint of like what her plan is with this situation, and then we switch POV. I used to have it that she literally got kidnapped in the first like page in my mind. I don't know when, I didn't write a draft for this yet, but anyway, so that chapter is sitting around like 2,500 words, and that's what I've been writing. I've been writing a little bit slower, and then this last, like while I was at the coffee shop, I finished up the first draft of the chapter, and then I went back through and like just cleaned it up a little bit, because the opening paragraph before was very like all in her head. Like, we had no sense of like time or place or setting. She was just thinking about like, there's this story I've been told as a child, and then she like thinks about her past, and I'm like, what are we doing? I liked the paragraph of interiority. It was just like, we shouldn't start the book with this, and so I moved around some of the interiority so that it happened throughout the dialogue. And then I added like a more fun little opening line. I love a little opening zinger. So the opening zinger of this book at this moment, TBD, is Dahlia ate a ridiculous amount of scones on the day she was to die. I think it's a little wordy, and I think I'm gonna change a ridiculous amount to like a specific like 17 or like 35. Dahlia ate 35 scones on the, like something about, I need to clean up the prose. So I think I've also, but that's the first sentence, so deal with it, okay? I think I've also just been struggling a bit with the prose style, because it's very formal, and I don't know how I feel about it, because it makes sense for her to have formal interiority and dialogue. And it's not so formal that it's like ridiculous to read. And it also has some humor in it as well. Like it's not just like that, and it's not with thous and thys and these, you know? It's just normal. It's just like more just polished, distinguished sentences. And it makes sense for her because that's how she was raised. I think Cecil's is still gonna be on the formal side, but not as formal as hers. But I think it's a learning curve for me because I think it's making some of my sentences like too long, and like I'm putting in too many like prefaces. I think, yeah, that's right. Or like prefaces and like too many words in sentences, which is a problem for me generally. So I feel like it would be easy writing in this more formal tone to like excuse away more of those words, because it's like, it's just the tone. So I was doing a lot of correcting of that. It's just a balance. And so it's new, but it's also exciting. Like I'm really loving this first chapter. It's a longer first chapter than my chapter length for thrillers was around like 1,400 to 2,300 words, I would say. It was an average chapter for me. This chapter's at 2,600, I think, 2,500. And it feels right. I'm not going to be too super particular about chapter length at this point, but I do want this draft to be good on its own and not be like throw away, rewrite the whole thing. Of course I will make edits, of course I will make changes, but I want it to stand on its own. And first chapters are always hard because you have to introduce so many things. So I think it will be easier, but it's hard not to fall into cliche. And so that's just things I'm thinking about as I'm writing, but it is going well. I think I'm gonna leave you here, and hopefully I will have another video out soon. I have kind of a busier week this week, but thank you so much for being here. I will see you so soon. Comment down below a princess emoji. It's so weird to go from like corporate girl boss Greer to like princess ? Dahlia, you know? Anyway, yeah, I'll see you so soon. Bye.